Hi, and welcome back to Mad Dots Art. As promised, today we are going to do an actual mandala together. And I decided to make this a 5x5 inch piece because I found this adorable two-sided picture frame at Dollar Tree for $1.25. So I would recommend that you cut yourself out a square. I'm just using cardstock. And I just cut it out to a 5x5 square, and I coated it with just some plain black paint. But you can really use whatever you have if you're just practicing. You don't have to put a background color on it. I just did that in case I make a mistake. I can just paint over top and cover it back up. And you can also use, a canvas panel if you have. I think 6x6 canvas panels are pretty easy to come by these days. So you can use whatever you're working with. But I will be working on a 5x5. So if you're using any other size, just know that you might have some extra. If you're using bigger, you're going to have some extra space in there at the end. Just going to grab my base coat paint in case I need to do any touch-ups. I'm going to be working with this set of paint from Deco Art Americana. It's the Brights line. This is a very affordable set right now. I think Hobby Lobby has them for right around $14 for the whole set, which is a good deal. But do know that you can use any colors that you want or that you have on hand. Or you can even, if you're just doing it to practice, you can even just use one solid color, do them all in white or do them all in red or whatever you have. All right, so first thing that we need to do is make some guidelines. I'm gonna not use a stencil because I'm aware that maybe not everybody has a stencil. So I will go through that real quick. Hopefully you can see okay, but do know that you can zoom in on your screen on YouTube. So I'm just matching up corner to corner, and I'm going to make a line. This is again a chalk pencil, no, a watercolor pencil. You could use chalk or even a white charcoal. I'll just say whatever you use. Don't press too hard. You want a water-soluble product so that you can wipe it off with a wet Q-tip or paper towel when you're done. So then you want to do side to side on each of your corners. And then you want to get right through the middle, top to bottom. And then right through the middle, side to side. This is it's a real rough guideline for you, and that gives you 8 points. And I think for what we're doing, that should be ample. I'm using a little Lazy Susan. You don't have to, but I find that it just makes things a little bit easier for me. And the first tool we are going to start with, I got some new DIY Mandala Stones tools, so hopefully you guys can see the numbers on here good. But I am using a number 14 DIY mandalas. If you're using a millimeter set of tools, this would equal a 7mm tool. And I'm going to start off with the red in the middle. So we just want to dip that tool into the paint. The bigger the dot, the more paint you're going to want on there. And try and get that centered pretty evenly. If you get a little dimple in your paint, that means you didn't have enough. So I'm going to just dip again. And and just lightly touch on top of there. I'm not trying to press down, I just want to gently place it on there. Great, that's our center dot. You're going to need something to wipe off your tools. I just use paper towel. And next, I'm using my number 2 DIY Mandala Stones tool. That would equate to a 1 millimeter if you're using that. You can also use your nail stylus in the 1 millimeter if you prefer those. Some people have a preference that way. I forgot to show you my first color I was using. If you're using the same set, is the True Red from DecoArt Americana. And then my next color that I'm going to use is bright orange. Again, these are all DecoArt Americana. So bright orange. So any orange that you want to use. And again, my number 2 DIY Mandala stones. Just gonna take my glasses off so I can see better. Now here, we basically want to make a nice ring around that, and you will find people do it different ways. I usually just freestyle and go around in a circle and try to get them about the same distance and size from one another, but I'll show you the way that a lot of people do it is to go right on the lines and then fill in between. So we'll just do it that way today. It's a little harder for me just to get everything lined up correctly, but the more you do it, the easier it will get. And then I just do one on each of my cross lines. See, I feel like these are farther apart, so these might not come out perfectly spaced. I think I've said it before in my tips and tricks videos, like the small details you're gonna find aren't really gonna notice. You're not gonna notice them a lot at the end when everything is filled in nicely. So these, even though sometimes I get frustrated if they're not perfectly spaced, it's not going to be that noticeable in the end. And then sometimes if you have a bigger gap in between, you can just make that dot a little bigger by re-dipping and re-putting it in there. That didn't come out very good. Hopefully yours came out better. I do a lot better just going around in a circle than trying to fill them in, just because I think it's really easy for those guidelines to not be perfectly spaced, but that will be okay for today. And the next tool I'm going to use is the number 3. So again, that would be a 1.5 if you're using millimeter tools or the nail stylus tools. And I'm going to be using bright yellow for this. And we just want to try and place them close to the line above, but without touching. So that's kind of the general rule of your dots and mandalas, is you want to kind of get them pretty close together, but without touching one another. And because my first row wasn't perfectly spaced, I'm not trying to fit these in between to stagger them, but I'm just kind of making them their own row. Size-wise, it's a little hard from the 2 to the 3. It seems like a pretty big step up. So really just try and keep them about the same distance apart from one another and from the orange row. So symmetry was much better on that row. for me, hopefully for you too. Okay, we're gonna bump up one size. That's a number 4 for the DIY mandala stones, or a number 2 if you're using millimeters. And the color here is the sour apple, or any green that you have, or any color that you have really. And now with these, I'm gonna try and get them staggered in between the space that I left on the other dots. Hopefully you can see this. So just below and kind of offset from where the other ones were. We don't want to go directly underneath the dots that you made, but we're kind of staggering in between. And you're just dipping and dotting for each of these. I should have said that. Hopefully you picked up on that. Like I said, I hope that you have had a chance to watch my tips and tricks videos to how to do these dots, and also the swooshes. We will be doing a few swooshes today, nothing too dramatic, but we will be using that technique a little bit. Okay, that was 4, so we're gonna do one more. As I said in one of my previous videos, I typically like to do at least 4 rows of dots before I make petals, so that I have enough room to make all the petals that I want. And for this one, I'm skipping to the peacock teal. And I'll be using a size 5, which would be a 2.5 millimeter. And again, I'm just going to stagger that in between where the last dots have their gap. And just do that all the way around your circle. I didn't quite get straight up and down on that one, and it made a weird shape. So to take your time and just really try and get that tool to go straight up and down instead of coming in at an angle. And that gives you the best shape. I really do like these colors all together. It's so vibrant and happy. Great. All right. So once you have your tools wiped off, I'm going to hop up to a number 10. And I'm going to go back to our red, the red, true red. And now I want to make a red dot on every one of my lines. So just touch and lift up. Try not to press too hard. Just let the paint kiss the surface. Great. Wipe off our tool. Okay, now we're gonna walk the dots. So here's another thing that I walked you through in the tutorial. So hopefully you had a chance to practice some of those. I'm going to start my cherry dot, what I'll call the cherry dot, with a 1.5 millimeter nail stylus tool. And then I'm going to walk my dots with the 1.0 millimeter. Okay, so I'm going to dip into my yellow. We're doing the yellow for this. And first I'm going to go all the way around and do my cherry dots. I'm going to set that off of the anchor dot just a little bit so I get a taper to my look instead of having them round. All the way around. I don't know how that got on there. I'll tell you, after working for a little bit, you're gonna say that too, like, how did that drip get on there? They seem to appear out of nowhere sometimes. Okay, and then here I'm going into my yellow. I'm gonna really swirl around to get my tool nice and loaded because I wanna have enough to get all the way down to the bottom. And then we're just going to, oops, not sure what happened there. If you don't feel like you have enough paint on your tool, just dip again at the top. Sometimes it just acts a little funny. And then we're gonna just walk them. It means you're not gonna re-dip on those. If you're working with a good paint consistency, you should pretty much find it pretty easy for your dots to get all the way down to the bottom. If your paint is too thick or too dry, you likely won't get a nice round dot, and you won't get, the dots won't reach all the way to the bottom. So some of it's technique, but a lot of it's about your paint. And I just tried to end on the same, roughly the same spot. So if one side wrapped all the way around, I would want to do it on this, you know, go just as far on the other side, but these aren't quite making it all the way around, which I don't really like that look anyway, so. Going a little faster, but you can always pause if you need to and catch up. All right, that's our first row of walk dots. And with me, I'm pretty predictable, I guess, with my walk dots. I usually use the same number tools every time I do them, unless I'm doing a really big piece, then I might bump up the size, but I'm just going to bump up now. So my next cherry dot, which is that middle center dot, is going to be a 2, and then the walked dots for the next row are 1.5. So really just bumping up one size for each of those elements. And I'm going to be using the sour apple for this row. Again, I'm going to give a little bit of space between my cherry dots so that I have enough room for symmetry. If they're too crowded, your subsequent rows will end up looking kind of rounded and they won't line up nice. So I always leave a little space in there. And then we're going to walk with a 1.5. Ooh. This paint is very thin, which is actually nice for dotting with. It just surprised me. As a reminder, if you haven't seen my other videos, DecoArt Americana is, in my opinion, the best straight from the bottle paint for dot mandalas. lot of the other paints are beautiful and have beautiful colors, but they need to be manipulated in order to work with them. So I think for learning, I didn't quite have enough, so I redipped on that one. If you're learning, I think that it's really great to have the Deco Art Americanas, because you get a better result just without having to monkey around with, you know, mixing things. Which will give you more confidence to keep going. So with these, you know, kind of makes a little diamond shape on the top. For me, the best way to imagine where to place this dot is to imagine if this row of dots were going up to the corner, where would I place the next dot if I were gonna continue this row up? And that's really how I kind of visualize it when I'm placing my dots in the rows. And this way I visualize it continuing up on its path. And that helps me figure out where to put that dot. But some people visualize it better by saying that they're making a diamond shape there. I'm going to tell you that it takes some practice. Very few people pick up these walk dots like right off the bat. The spacing is a little tricky at first, but the more you do it, the better you'll get. So don't worry too much if they're not perfect. And until you get used to your paints, you know, it helps to space them out a little bit more so you don't have any running together. And next we're going to go back to the peacock teal. And I'm going up one size. So my last cherry dot was a 2, so now I'm going to do a 2.5, and I'm going to walk it with the 2. All right, again, leave a little bit of room in between. And now we're going with the 2 and just, oops, I got the wrong end. The 2 is the big size of the white tool if you don't have yours marked. These should be getting kind of big now for you. Gives a neat optical illusion. I didn't quite get as big of a dot on that side, so I'm just gonna redip real quick. The more even you can be side to side is better for your starting dot. You'll have a better shape. So I really kind of want to start in the same area, which if your row before that was even, you really don't have to look at too much. You just line it up in those crisscross directions. And it pretty much comes out how you want it. Whenever I can see like one side's first dot is bigger, I redip so that the other side comes out similar. If you're wondering why sometimes I'm redipping, I'm just kind of assessing the size of the dot. And that can come from just not having the same amount of paint on your tool one time to the next. My paint pot is getting a little bit low in this color, so sometimes when I dip, it's going into a less deep area, and I'm getting a little less paint on there. Oh, I should have gotten a little more on that, but it's okay. I think the more you do it too, you can tell, you can see the differences, you know, if one size is a little bigger right away from the start, so that you can fix it before you start to walk your dots down. It's just one of those things that gets better with practice, or easier, or feels more natural, I guess. Okay, we've got the lock dots on, and now we are going to do some swooshes. Dun dun dun! If your paint is nice and fluid, this is not a big deal. You really want your paint to be kind of runny, on the runny side. If it's really thick and dry, it's really going to be hard to get it to go where you want it to go. So here I'm using a number 2, and we are using Brilliant Purple is the color that I'm using. So I'm going to do 3 dots above to make a little triangle shape. We're gonna go, I'm gonna do them all the way around first, and then we'll do the swoosh. Oops, I didn't quite get enough paint on there. And again, there we go. I want them to be roughly the same size, so I'm re-dipping for every dot. And then also, if you ever notice, like one is smaller, like that, for sure, just re-dip and press on that dot again. It's easier to do it when it's wet, so you can just it's kind of like adding extra paint to that spot. Okay, hopefully you guys are enjoying this so far. I find it really fun and even kind of meditative when you're really just working on a piece. Sometimes I just zone out. I don't need any sound. I just relax and let the paint talk to me. Okay, for swoosh, we want a good puddle on there, and then we're gonna just take our tool. Actually, I'm gonna have you do, no, I'm gonna stay with the 2. Usually I go with a smaller tool, but this is a long way to travel with a swoosh. So I'm just gonna stick with the 2. Good puddle. Drag it down. And you're gonna do that all the way around all of your blue dots. Peacock teal. Puddle. Oh, that one got really big on me. And drag. Didn't get quite as much as the others, so I'm just gonna re-dip. These don't have to be perfect. They don't have to come to a really sharp point on the end. So that one got a little faded out on me, so I just redid a little bit while it's wet. Is the more paint that you have on your tool, the fatter the line it's going to make, but also the farther it can go. So we have kind of a far way to go. That's why I'm putting so much of a little puddle in there. Great. I hope you guys were able to manage that okay without too much trouble. So now I don't want to get things real crowded in here, otherwise you can see I can't make a very big spread out petal. So I'm just going to do a little transition, and I'm gonna start with a not super close to the center of that petal, but just kind of up a little bit. I'm gonna put a yellow dot, and again this is, I'm using the same size 2 tool. I mean to leave you guys high and dry. Okay, this is just gonna fill in that space for us, but also give us some height so we can add the petals. And next I'm going to take the other side of that white tool, which is your 1.5. I'm just going to put one little dot on bottom and 2 dots on top. And I'm only just dipping the one time. So it's kind of like walking dots, but not really. Okay, we got that on there. All right, next I'm gonna use a size 10 dotting rod again. If you're using millimeters, that would be a 5. And we're gonna use sour apple for our dots here. So then right above where your yellow dots that you just made ended, we're gonna put our number 10 green in there. All the way around. Ooh, that did not come out the right shape. I'm gonna add more paint to get it a little nicer shape. I'm getting low on paint in my pot, so it's not covering the tool as nicely, and then I get a weird shape. We got that there. And then we're gonna do some more walk dots. And this time I'm gonna start out with my peacock teal. And again, we're gonna do the cherry dots in a 1.5 and the walk dots in a 1. I wonder if I have any left in here. I think I do. I'm gonna get a little more paint in my paint pot. If you're using a palette and it's just out in the air and you start to notice that it's changing consistency, you can just add more fresh paint on top. You're probably noticing that happening by now as they start to dry kind of fast. So I do recommend the paint pots if you think you're gonna get into this or do it a lot. Yeah, this keeps your paint fresher so you don't have to waste as much. And then again, we're just gonna walk these guys with our 1 millimeter for this row. I'm going a little faster to help the video not take so long. Again, you can always pause or change the speed of playback on your video. And that one went a little astray. These do come out better if you go slower. Alright, there's our blue. Next we're gonna jump up to a yellow. And same with the size 2 for our cherry dot. That's the large end of the white tool, and 1.5 walking. Sorry if my head gets in the way. I like to lean in nice and close. Hopefully you can still see what I'm doing. And switch into that 1.5. Lighter colors act differently. So normally I would expect this to make a bigger dot, but for some reason these light colors are just a little different. Swirled it. Smaller than the other side. That got really big. That one got so big, I'm gonna just get a little more. Because these came out so big, I'm just gonna make the cherry dot a little bigger on that one so it doesn't look odd. Alright, so we're gonna jump up one more size to the 2.5, and then I'm gonna come back with my 2 for the walking. My tool was not completely clean, so I'm just wiping that off real quick. And orange is our color. That's the bright orange. 2.5. I'm a little low on paint. Just gonna add some to my pot. And then our 2 for walking. This orange, I find I like to double dip it just to get the dots a little bigger from the top. Again, it's a lighter color, so it just acts a little bit different. It's not too thick, but it's just, I think it's got a lot of pigment in it, and I think that's what's maybe part of why some of the lighter colors just act a little different. Now that one was big, so I'll just keep the 1 dot. This, after you play with your paints a little bit and do this a little while, you'll get a feel for which ones need a little extra help getting down the rows. I tend to hold my breath when I'm doing walk dots for some reason. Maybe that's like crossing your fingers that they'll go the way you want them to. Took me a long time to get good at walk dots. And swooshes. Okay, 1 more there. More there. Okay. And now we're gonna do red. And we're bumping up. This time we are going to use the 3.0 for your cherry dot and a 2.5 for the walking. Such a pretty color. I was in the habit of using a folk art color of red, which was much darker. And then when I rediscovered this red, I was really excited to see how vibrant it is. It's kind of fun to use different colors, different brands, and different shades of your favorite colors. Again, I'm kind of going faster for the sake of keeping this video a little shorter. But just take your time with these so you can get the dots where you want them to go. I also notice when I try to go really fast on things, I usually have more paint splashes on my canvas or surface. My cardstock is a little warped from the paint on it, but once everything is sealed and protected, that all settles down. So even if you notice that your paper or cardstock or whatever you're using is a little warped with the base coat on it, it does settle down after it's all sealed. Okay, I'm just wiping off my tool just to get some of the buildup off, but I'm gonna stay with the 2.5 tool. And now I'm actually gonna walk it in the opposite direction. So I'm gonna start at the bottom and walk it up. And I'm gonna do that on both sides. It's okay if it doesn't make it all the way to the top. I think they typically don't. I don't know why going this direction shouldn't be any different, but it doesn't have to. It actually makes kind of a neat effect when the fact that it doesn't go all the way to the top, because then it looks like it's fading out a little bit. I came up with this pattern just one time, just experimenting. You know, it's real easy to get into the habit of doing things all in one direction or all one way. But I thought, you know what, I wonder what it looks like if I do dots going the opposite direction. And it actually kind of fills things in nicely without having to do more swooshes. Swooshes are fine, but sometimes I get a little bored with the same design. I'll show you this. My one side didn't make it quite as far. I probably just didn't have enough paint on there, so I'm going to take a smaller tool, a 1.5, and just start a little bit lower down and walk that one up. And that helps to fill in that area. Make them look a little more even. All right, we got all the way around with the red, and now I'm gonna do the same thing with the orange, just on the outside of where that was. If you find that your purple's in the way, just move your dots up. I also don't, if they start to get too close together in the middle, I don't force an extra dot to go in. I just kind of work with the one dot that's in there. So here's a good example. Like I couldn't fit two right next to each other. I just went up one row. sometimes that happens, and that's okay. As much as mandalas are an exercise in symmetry, getting perfect symmetry is very hard, so you just use your little tricks like that to compensate. Okay, we got all the way around with the orange. It's actually pretty close together in between these, so on my original I got a yellow in there, but I'm gonna skip that on this one because it's gonna make it more round and close together, so I think I like it just as is. So the last thing that I would do on here is top dots. So that just means putting another dot in the center of where the original ones were. And to expedite, you can do 3 rows. I think on these I did orange first and then yellow in the middle, but the orange is really not that noticeable, so I'm gonna skip right up to the yellow for this design. And we did a 14 in the middle, so usually I like to go down at least 3 to 4 sizes for my top dot. I'm gonna go ahead with a 10, and I'm gonna just top dot in yellow. So again, this would be in 5 millimeters if you're working in millimeters. And you just want to get a good amount of paint on that. You have to wait until this is relatively dry, otherwise your dot won't come out correctly, the top dot. And you just dip, kind of just like sitting it on top. And these were a 10, so I'm gonna go down actually to a 6 on that. Sometimes I do just 3 down, but I think I like more of the base color showing through, especially since I'm only gonna do 2 colors. Then it looks a little more balanced. You can just play around with these top dots and add as many different tops as you want, just getting smaller in tool size. So if I were going to add another dot on top of there, I would probably go down 2 sizes, sometimes 3. And then on the greens, I did an orange. They look dry enough. And that was a 10, so I'll also do a size 6 for my orange top dots. Just relatively centered. Not actually touching my tool to the surface. I'm just letting the paint do the work, just letting it kind of slide off. That way I'm not pressing too hard on the dot that was down there. So like I said, if after that layer of dots dries and you feel like you want to put another color in the middle, experiment, have fun. You can do white in the middle, which kind of makes it look bright, or whatever color you feel like. Also, if you feel like putting anything else on the outside, have fun, play around with it. You're welcome to recreate this, and even if you're selling it, I don't care. It's my design, and go for it. Have fun. So hopefully you enjoyed that. If you see my other video I have about cleaning up, you'll want to just use some kind of, once everything is really dry overnight, usually I wait You'll take a damp paper towel or Q-tip and get your watercolor pencil off, or chalk pencil if that's what you're using, charcoal. And then seal it with your sealer of choice. And I do have a video on the differences between the sealers. So that is it for our first mandala trip together, guys. I hope that you had fun, and leave a like or a comment, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.